Well, on our way to the van, we'll learn about some family history.
We're going to Riverdale first. Riverdale is where Mount St. Vincent is.
Okay.
And then we're going into Yonkers, where all the spots are where I grew up. And then we're going to the cemetery, where my parents and their grandparents are buried. And then we're going to the racetrack.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm going to tell you about Mount St. Vincent first, okay? Greta, when I went to college, we had to wear stockings and a hat, okay? Every day. I was a freshman class president, and then you couldn't be president for 2 years in a row. So the next year, I was the National Federation of Catholic College Representatives, and that's how I got to go to Europe so young, you know, when I was still in college. They sent me on this trip. And then for junior year, I was re-elected class president, and senior year, I was student body president. The reason I'm saying this is because the graduation week was quite traumatic, and it's a story I want to tell you all because there's a lot around it and about it. As student body president, I had to deal with, I was also in charge of any student violations. And anyway, I had to meet with the dean of the school, this nun, almost every week. She really was a problem and very autocratic. And anyway, somehow I got through the year until graduation week, when I got a call from one of my classmates by the name of Flo Pettin, and she said that Flo was a scholarship student for 4 years. Her parents were first generation, and they really couldn't speak English too well, and she was outstanding. She was also president of the Dramatic Society, and they had told her that she could not graduate because she was not, quote, the type that they wanted to graduate. And I knew, as being chair of the discipline committee, that this was way out. We had never had a problem with Flo. She was a day student on top of it. The worst thing I saw her do was wear curlers one day in the auditorium. Well, this was really traumatic. And I realized, and suddenly for me, the curtain fell down. I knew that I had to do something, and I had to take this dean on, because this dean, this was her idea. And the thing that they would say is the doors swing in and the doors swing out, and we can tell who goes in and who goes out. So the first thing I did was call the philosophy professor, a priest, who was a good friend of mine, and I liked him a lot, and I told him what was going on. You know what he said to me? He said, get a lawyer. He said, it's the only way you're going to be able to fight this. Don't try to go to the Monsignor or anything like that. Fortunately, one of our classmates' father was, I can't think of his first name, his last name is O'Brien, and he was a very big labor lawyer in New York. So before I met with the lawyer, I had to tell my parents, because this was pretty traumatic. I'm getting a lawyer to go after, you know, the president of the school, and this is graduation week. The week goes on for a whole week. So this was the beginning of the week. In any event, I went, and this is what I want you all to hear, to tell you what my parents were like. Now, nobody had gone to college in the family. I was the first one. So, I mean, outside of Uncle Sal, he had actually finished. But I mean, this was a big deal for my parents and my grandmother, who was still alive. So anyway, I went to my mother and father, and they knew Flo, and I told them what was going on. And I said, it's this woman, which they knew that I had, you know, there were a lot of problems with her. And I didn't know what they were going to say, because by my getting a lawyer, I was really jeopardizing my own graduation. You know what they said to me? They said, if the piece of paper that is your diploma isn't worth anything if you don't fight for this, I will never forget it. Anyway, so we got the lawyer, all right? And the lawyer was terrific. And what he did is he met with us and he heard the story. What this also did is it literally split the graduating class in half. Between half of them who were ready to, fight, and the other half who were scared to death. And it really tells you how many people, when push comes to shove, really don't want to, do something. Anyway, so the lawyer took the whole thing in hand, and he knew Flo very well. So the next thing we hear is that I hear from the lawyer, and he said, Flo will graduate with the class. I said, really? It was one class. How? What happened? And he said, I just told, Sister Catherine was her name, I just told her that unless Flo graduated with the class tomorrow morning, the next morning the Daily News would have this on the front page of what this Catholic college was doing to this young, very able, bright student. And so the nun tried to say, well, we'll let her graduate in August. And he said, no way, she's going to graduate with the class. Our graduation was when Flo went up to graduate, the whole school went crazy because they were all there. And parents, because they knew the story, as well as when I went up. And the cardinal was there, and he was looking around trying to say, what is this? Now, as a follow-up, Flo went on to the Lincoln Center to become one of the leading ballerinas and also one of the leading managers associated with it. And she died just a couple of years ago, but was extremely well known. And the write-ups after she died were just incredible. And her parents were crying at the graduation because they couldn't fight it. I mean, if it had been my parents, they would have fought it because they fought everything, but they couldn't. So anyway, they, as the punishment, I did not get the $100 check that the student body president is supposed to get, and it was very traumatic. So I did not go back to Mount St. Vincent for 25 years because of all this feeling about this. But in any event, I don't know why, but as Eric knows, I guess in '96 they voted me the alumni of the year. So these people won't know anything about that history, but I wanted you to know it because for me, the lesson of my parents, of the way they took this and, and encouraged me, I will never forget. And so the other thing is, what I learned is, here we were, college students trying to fight, the whole administration, and we're talking about in the early 1950s, and you can win. You can win when you really, sometimes you can't, but it is possible. So that's my story about St. Vincent. Okay?
That's great. Awesome.
School at St. Barnabas, well, we had proms. We had proms in all of the major hotels in New York. And that would be like at the Waldorf or the Plaza. And we would go, and it would be formal. The guys would be in tuxes. And we would go down on the subway, and we'd be there, and then we'd go out to the Staten Island ferry. And literally, I would not get home till 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning. And remember now, we had no cell phones, anything like that. And that was perfectly, all the Catholic schools did that. And it was just really, really, just something that we just took for granted. Of course, remember, we had no cars. I mean, a lot of people in New York don't have cars.
But then you couldn't dance touching each other.
That's right.
Some of those.
Don't break the balloon.
Right. That's St. Barnabas High School. That we had a tea dance. I'll never forget. And all of a sudden, I felt this tap on my shoulder, and there's the nun saying, "TP, TP." What that means is tissue paper. If I can't get tissue paper between you and he, then something's wrong. So that's another one was that when you went out with a boy, if you had to sit on his lap, bring a telephone book because you should. Absolutely. And the fun thing was the guys knew it. They just thought it was funny. It was just accepted. It was fun.
Bring a telephone book.
What about patent leather shoes?
I remember now this senior year in college, we're about to graduate, and the nun decided to bring a doctor in to give us a lesson on sex. So she comes in with these enormous pictures, okay, of a male and a female, and hangs them up, and then she leaves, and the doctor turns around and says, I don't want to say anything, but she hung him upside down.
Oh.